Roslyn Pope is a native Atlantan. She's an academic and civil rights icon. As an accomplished pianist, Dr. Pope has been playing piano since her youth and has accompanied a number of high-profile musical events. Dr. Pope continued her academic record at Spelman College, where she majored in music and minored in French and English. A very active and lauded student, along with Marian Wright Edelman, who went on to found the Children's Defense Fund, if you've heard of that organization. She was selected as a Merrill Scholar, and she chose to study music in Paris during her junior year at Spelman. During this time, she studied under the tutelage of many famous French musicians that I cannot name because I don't want to butcher their names. However, when we were talking before, she told me their names. I'm going to make sure she mentions them so you can look them up. I looked them up and they look super legendary. Returning to the segregated South with a newfound understanding of humanity, Dr. Pope, along with Julian Bond and others, worked on a document called An Appeal for Human Rights. And this was actually done and created and thought about, conceived after the Greensboro sit-ins. This document eloquently detailed demands for equality and was the catalyst for the Atlanta student movement, which, if you've listened to our conversations before, was a big catalyst for change for the civil rights movement as a whole. An Appeal for Human Rights, the document that Dr. Pope authored, is regarded as one of the world's most important civil rights documents. After her undergraduate education, Dr. Pope went on to get her master's in English Lit from Georgia State and her PhD in interdisciplinary studies from Syracuse University. She's held a number of educational positions around the country. She still regards music as a primary joy of her life. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Roslyn Pope.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello, Dr. Pope. I'm well, how are you?
Okay, thank you. Nice.
Good. I'm so happy that you're joining us and we can chat without our masks.
Yes, that's very, very good.
Yeah. We can chat without our masks. So that's really good. And did I get your bio correct? Was I?
Yes, you did a fine job.
Okay, perfect. So as I told you before, we've talked to a lot of your friends. We've talked to Miss Henrietta Antonine, who was our guest right before you. She was our July guest, and she was incredible. And she really kept the audience engaged and really told us a lot about what was going on. And really, she gave us the perspective of a lady who was in business in the insurance industry in the segregated South, and really helped to transform a company, which was super interesting. We talked to Charles Black. Who is your friend, and also a member of the Atlanta student movement and a leader on campus at Morehouse. We've talked to Dr. Gwendolyn Middlebrooks, who is also your friend, and who connected me to you. Thank goodness. Thank you, Dr. Middlebrooks, if you're watching. And we've talked to Dr. Herschel Challenor, who is also another friend of yours, who is also a Merrill Scholar from Spelman as well, and also studied in Paris.
Exactly.
And we talked to Willie Watkins and Reggie Haslam. We've talked to a number of people, but I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you are welcome. So the first part of our conversation with any Sweet Auburn Stories guest is something I like to call wordplay. And the reason we call it wordplay is because we used to hold these conversations before COVID-19 at WERD Studios, which you're familiar with.
Of course.
Yes, which is, for our guests watching, the nation's first Black-owned radio station. This is where Dr. King and other civil rights leaders would actually broadcast their message to African-American audiences. And it's a play on words, pun intended. So there is the hashtag. So all I'm going to do, Dr. Pope, is hold up one word and you can tell me what you think. You can give me an opinion. You can give me a thought. You can give me a song. I don't care. I just like to know what you think. All right, let's get going. First one, Malcolm X.
Well, certainly an icon, a brilliant person, a wonderful leader.
Yeah, Wonderful leader. Was there, so you were in the era of, kind of the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. debate. What was it like, this side versus that side? Was it a very clear and strong thing, or were there some people who agree with both ideologies?
I think there were people who were able to see each person's side.
Right.
Malcolm X, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
We didn't have to actually choose.
Right.
Because each of them had a wonderful point of view to present for our consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And actually, Dr. Middlebrooks told me about the time when she actually met Malcolm X when he came to Spelman, or he came to Morehouse in Spelman, and they took a walk with him. She and Dr. Challenor actually hung with Malcolm X for a little bit in the afternoon.
I didn't know that. I probably was out of the country.
Okay. I was like, I didn't know if you were on that walk along.
I was. I missed it.
Okay, our next one. Paris.
Well, a wonderful city, an extraordinary location to spend some time. Fortunate if you lived there, and just an extraordinary place with so much culture and things to partake of.
Yeah.
And beautiful.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Gorgeous. All right. Auburn Avenue.
Well, you can't really talk about Blacks in Atlanta without bringing up Auburn Avenue, because where most of our, the business world, the religious world, as well as everything that you could possibly want.
Right.
You could find on Auburn Avenue.
This is what I hear. Yeah, Ms. Antonine in our last conversation said even outside of her time at Atlanta Life Insurance, she spent a lot of time on Auburn Avenue. Yeah, just kind of hanging out. So I asked her, and I asked you, were you kind of hanging at the clubs there where you were, that wasn't your vibe?
I might have gone to one club.
One club, but I understand.
I think it was the Royal Peacock.
The Royal Peacock, which still is around today.
It is.
Yeah.
Maybe the only one from way back in the past.
Right. And for those of you all watching, the Royal Peacock is very important because the Royal Peacock is where a lot of Black artists performed when they couldn't perform in the white clubs. So This is Little Richard, James Brown, a lot of people. Performed there.
Came because they knew that would be the only place they could see them.
Right. That's incredible. All right. Rap music.
Well, a little bit after my time.
After your time, do you like it?
It's not my favorite. Kind of music.
Yeah.
And because I grew up on classical music, and that's where my life was spent.
Right.
So I have a great appreciation for classical music.
Yeah.
I admire the rap musicians.
Yeah.
I don't follow them so much.
Yeah.
But I know that they're a great influence.
They are. And I think, and that's a debate or a conversation for another day, but I think they're a lot of the musicians who are driving a lot of our culture, not just Black culture, but American culture in general. So I'll play some for you after this. I'll let you hear some.
Okay, good.
Yeah. You can let me know what you think. All right. The Postal Service.
Well, I think a lot about the Postal Service because my father worked there.
Ah, okay.
During the time when there were very few Black postal workers.
Right.
And I've known many Black men who worked, including my brother.
Right.
worked in the Postal Service.
Oh,
So,
wow. The gentleman that I met?
yes.
Okay.
So I've grown up being close to the post office.
Right.
And, it's been a tremendous influence in our community, and they've done a lot of good. And I hate to see it being tampered with and used for, well, it's hard to pick a word for it, but it's a lot different from what I grew up on over the years. It's
right.
Turned into something that doesn't favor us used to.
Right. Yeah. And our last one, human rights.
Well, it's part of the title of my document, An Appeal for Human Rights.
Yeah.
So actually, that's what my life has been about. And it's been down and it's been up. It's very difficult to maintain a steady, to keep human rights where it should be.
Yeah.
It's tampered with and
all the time.
Try to change, take it away and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that it's a part of my title indicates that it's very important to me.
Yeah. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that later because I think just the document is brilliant, and even the title of it, going from the title to the footnote to the signatures, I think is just such an important and a beautiful, beautiful document. So thank you so much for playing wordplay. I just wanted to break the ice a little bit with you. So that's been wordplay, folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Good words.
Thank you. Good words, right? Nothing too crazy. It wasn't anything from left field. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit. This is a portion of our conversation where we get right into the conversation. And I read the audience a little bit of your bio. We've talked before, but I'm so happy to dig into some of this and really figure out how Roslyn Pope became the author of this world-renowned document, this world-renowned human rights document that's still used as an example in many schools today. And so we'll dig into that a little bit, but we can start with your youth here in Atlanta. We know you're a native Atlantan. Grew up at Friendship Baptist Church, which is the church that Henrietta Anthony grew up in as well.
They're together as little babies.
So you all were there you all were there as babies. And I mean, first of all, I don't know what type of civil rights water they were giving you all. It must have been incredible, and the education had to be incredible, because I've heard Dr. Middlebrooks as well and others talk about how the Black church during the segregated South, during the Jim Crow era and before, actually and even now represented so much. It was more than just a religious institution. It was really an institution where you learned a lot of different things and a lot of different philosophies and had a lot of different discussions, academically, religious, etc. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then this tells me something about the types of leaders that the churches were cultivating, especially Friendship. And then so I'm curious about, from your perspective, what did Friendship and the Black church in general represent for you in your youth?
Well, I started at a very young age when I was first taken to Friendship by my father.
Yeah.
Who worked at the post office, I've already mentioned, but also was a human rights, how shall I describe him? Most of his life had to do with the state of Black.
Oh, wow.
And what needed to change and that sort of. When Henrietta and I started, the pastor of Friendship was E.R. Carter.
Okay.
People know E.R. Carter as the former name of an elementary school, but we
that's okay.
Himself. And he was then followed by Maynard Jackson, the father.
Okay.
Of the mayor
right.
of Atlanta eventually. And all along, the people who have been leaders at Friendship have also been leaders in the community. And so we were kind of all one, just a family.
Yeah.
The teachers, the pastors,
right.
people who followed them.
Right.
And we had to incorporate life as a human being along with religious life, because all we had actually.
Right.
Places that we couldn't go, couldn't be a part of, could not experience. But the people who were leading us had tremendous ability to lead and to lead us in the direction where we would be able to make the most of our lives.
Right.
So the pastors were very important, and up until today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So Henrietta and I have been there the whole time. I was out of the city for different things and different periods of time.
Right.
But it all leads back to Friendship.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, do you still keep in touch with anybody outside of Henrietta? Are you active there in any way?
I attend. My brother.
Oh, okay.
Is a retired trustee, and so he took over from my father, who was a trustee at Friendship.
What does that mean?
Well, it's among the highest level of leadership.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So they really guide the church in every
aspect.
Okay.
So my brother just retired a year ago, and he's a long period there, as did our father.
Right.
So Friendship has been
and I forgot that Maynard Jackson, the mayor's father, was the minister of Friendship as well. So whatever was happening at Friendship was incredible. A lot of great people came from Friendship. But so you, from a young age, you went to Friendship. You were growing up here in Atlanta. You were, really stood out academically in your youth. We talked about that a little bit, and we talked about you actually, studying music from a very, very young age. What age did you start studying piano?
5.
5. Mm-hmm. You still play to this day?
I started going to Friendship at 4.
Okay.
My brother was a couple of years younger, so he had to wait a little while.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
But one of the main advantages of my having gone to Friendship was that I met Theodora Fisher James.
Right.
She was the wife of Willis Lawrence James, who became head of the Spelman music department.
Right.
And I think at 4, I played a little piece on the piano, and Mrs. James heard me, and she said, I have to teach that child, but I have to wait till she turns 5. So this might have been in the fall before I turned 5. And I stayed with her until I went to Spelman. And then I got over to her husband, who was head of the music department at Spelman.
Right.
But Willis Lawrence James and Theodora Fisher James were extraordinary contributors to the music.
Right.
In Atlanta.
Right. And so from there, so you were an accomplished musician. You were studying with the James. And even before college, though, you had an opportunity to have a lot of really cool music experiences. You mentioned to me before that you played with the Atlanta Symphony in high school, correct?
Right.
So take me through that experience as a Black woman in, the late 1940s, early 1950s, playing with the Atlanta Symphony, because I understand that the arts can be a very exclusive club, especially when you reach the kind of elite arts, like, the fine music and this. So what was that experience like for you?
Well, the Atlanta Symphony had a series of concerts for students, maybe 4 or 5 concerts a year.
Yeah.
But the Black students had one concert and the white students had another concert. They'd hear the same music, but not.
You couldn't even play in the same concert.
Not at the same time. So
oh, wow.
Auditions were held for the whites and the Blacks to choose people who would perform not with the symphony, but on a program of the symphony.
Got it.
And so I was one of those among the Black students. There were a lot of extraordinary Black musicians, as a matter of fact, going during that period. People took piano.
Right.
Yeah. And, and we had wonderful bands. And I mean, really, my generation contributed a number of outstanding musicians.
Wow.
We had these auditions, and then there might be 4 concerts in a season, and there would be a musician chosen by audition for each of those concerts. So fortunate to perform.
So then when you were performing with the symphony, did you all ever intermingle with any of the white students, whether it was in rehearsal or everything was separate?
Not during my generation, no.
Not during okay. So then let me ask you this. When was the first time that you actually intermingled with a white person? Do you remember that? Do you remember that time?
I think I mentioned to you my having been a Girl Scout from
yes.
age. And I was chosen to represent Georgia at this encampment in South Dakota, I think it was.
Right.
And I went there to represent Georgia as the outstanding Girl Scout, and I was the only Black person there.
Got it.
The other 49 were white Girl Scouts. And got a lot of attention and made a lot of friends because it was so extraordinary for them to be with me, or for me to be with them, for that matter.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So you went to this encampment. That sounds a little scary to me. I'm not gonna lie. Sounds a little scary. And you go away to South Dakota with 49 other Girl Scouts.
Who were all white.
And you're the only Black person, and you all are in the woods?
Yes, but we were Girl Scouts, so we were not going to hurt each other.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, my blood pressure is going up. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Were you playing piano there at the Girl Scout encampment too?
I did, yes.
Oh, really?
I performed on the talent nights. Yeah.
Do you keep in touch with any of those of the 49?
No.
Okay.
Not this late.
Understandable.
We moved on.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So your experience with the Atlanta Symphony's program was great, but it was very, separate, so segregated in its nature.
Right.
And so my next kind of question is, what I always like to do in these is really give our audience an opportunity to understand the gravity of segregation. Right. Because I think we have an opportunity to easily take it for granted because it's not something that we've experienced in my lifetime. However, this is something that we've discussed, and I remember us discussing when I was a kid, that you can't do this and you can't do this. But I don't know. I haven't been in, primary school in a while. I don't know how much that's discussed now. But can you just tangibly give us a few more examples of segregation and how separate it was at the most basic levels.
Well, at the school levels, segregation. In churches, there was segregation. We didn't eat in the same restaurants. We didn't go to the same library.
Right.
There were city libraries for whites in their neighborhoods and for us in our neighborhoods, but there was no intermingling.
And that was just the law. Like it was just like, no, you don't go there or you can get hurt or arrested or whatever.
Yes, and that didn't happen much because we didn't go where we knew we weren't supposed to go.
Right.
Yeah. So it was very rigid. Except for certain times, like my experience with the Girl Scouts, for example.
Right.
It had to be something extraordinary. And there were probably in my scouting years, there were other examples of when white and Black Girl Scouts got together, but that was a rare event.
Right. So when you did go to the Girl Scout encampment in South Dakota with the other 49, I'm going to keep going back to that because I don't know if I even realized the gravity of that situation before I'm regurgitating it. But my question is, though, were they like, wow, like were they doing the touch your hair, touch your skin? Do you all do this? Is this how
yes, I was the most popular person there. Everybody wanted to get to know me because they didn't have any Black Girl Scouts that came with me. I was the only one out of the 50 states. And it was really extraordinary that I had come from Georgia. People commented on
Right. Oh, I'm sure. Right.
From New York or Washington or any place where they might have expected to have a Black Girl Scout. I came from Georgia. So that was a very big deal.
So that was extraordinary on, that was kind of progressive on the Georgia Girl Scouts.
It was,
kind of on their part. And also it was, were your parents concerned about that experience for you?
If so, they didn't articulate, we're scared for you to go or anything.
Okay.
They were very proud that I was chosen.
Yeah.
And they felt that, these were Girl Scouts.
Right. It's a relatively harmless group of folks, one would think, right? The Girl Scout encampment. Like I would hope so. But you never know. I don't know. Okay, so then that's good. So then you kind of talked us through a little bit about how segregated it was in your experience as a Girl Scout and going to that. But I also want to talk about a little bit of the danger, because something that I think about too, I think about how often we as Black people actually have residual trauma from times, from past times of segregation when we had to be overly concerned about where we went, who we were going with, the time we were inside, the time we were not. And I think in Atlanta now in 2020, take us back to like February, a Black person could go anywhere. And like, we're very, we can go in and out and whatever, in this restaurant, out of this restaurant. But when I was thinking about this conversation and thinking about things that you've done, I don't know why I hearken back to like the danger that parents might have felt that their children were always in just for existing.
Well, when you grow up in a segregated society, there's not going to be that much concern with danger because you're not going to be mingling with people. It was after graduation.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, that's when
there was a little bit of the danger.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, that's an interesting point, but totally fair. So after integration, it was more, everyone's like, okay, you can go there, but then I guess the parents are like, no. Although they say you can go there, don't go there. You're not wanted.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, that's a really good a good point. And okay, well that's really good to know. So then I want to go back to. So you do you're doing music, you're an accomplished student, you're in the Girl Scouts prior to college, you're doing well in school, right? You're at Washington High? No, yes, at Washington High, right? Okay, so we're
that was the only black
school at that time in Atlanta, right?
In Atlanta.
The first and only black public high school in Atlanta. If we have Atlanta people watching, I would implore you to go check out Washington High. It's in a very beautiful part of town, right in Ashview Heights. It's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous campus, and they don't make schools like that pretty anymore, I don't think.
And that's followed by David T. Howard, which was on the other side of town, but it was
got it. Okay, well, on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then you're doing well, and then it's time for college. You're all excited to go to college. I have a couple questions there. First, was it an expectation amongst most black people, or was it just your family that had already pushed you academically and understood where you were? Was college a thing that it was like, okay, you're going to college, and every black person is going to college? Was that a thing?
Not every, but a good number of people. West side of Atlanta. They grew up.
West side?
West side.
Yeah.
That had gone to Washington High.
Yeah.
It was not unusual for the people who had graduated from that school to go on to college.
Okay. So it was like a feeder, like college was something that was in the normal conversation after high school for a lot of students. Oh, that's great. So then you were into music. You told me that you wanted to go to Oberlin to study music.
I did tell you that. I wanted badly to go to Oberlin.
Yeah.
But my daddy insisted that I go to Spelman.
Okay.
I walked to Spelman. And then there were these marvelous music people at Spelman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really have a choice. It was my desire to go to Oberlin, and I'm sure that would have been marvelous, but nothing could have been better than going to Spelman and being chosen a Merrill Scholar to go study abroad. That
right.
At Oberlin.
Yeah. So then I was gonna ask. So you don't regret your choice going?
No.
Okay.
That was the place for me to go.
That was the place, and
my father was right.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I went to an HBCU myself, and I talked to a lot of people that went to majority institutions, and we talk about the different opportunities that we were given and just the level of care. Mm-hmm. And I find that the level of care a lot of times is greater at HBCUs because of the tight-knit community and the types of people that you have there. So, okay, we're moving along. You get to Spelman, you don't regret it, you're doing well in school, and you're chosen as a Merrill Scholar because of your scholarship at Spelman. So for everyone who a little background on the Merrill Scholarship Program. I did a little research. So the Merrill Scholarship Program was started by Charles Merrill Jr. And he is the son of Charles Merrill Sr., who is the co-founder of Merrill Lynch, the financial institution.
Yes.
So the son was a very big civil rights activist and actually had a very, very big commitment to civil rights. And so he created this scholarship program that was for people like yourself, people that were high potential, and for them to go and travel the world. I saw a quote from him, and he talked about how he traveled all throughout Europe in his youth. And then as he got older, he went to different other places in the world, and how he so wanted to bring this experience to Black people. So it's a very big deal at this time.
It's a big deal, and it had just begun the year before I went. There was one student who went.
Okay.
Who was the first Merrill Scholar.
Right.
The second year, Marion Wright and I were chosen. There were two of us.
Exactly. And so, like I mentioned in Dr. Pope's bio, Marion Wright Edelman is the founder of the Children's Defense Fund.
Exactly.
Which is a giant organization, very well known, and that is who you went. That is who you were a Merrill Scholar with.
Exactly.
So you got, and so with this program, you got to go to the city of your choice, anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world.
And you got to study whatever you wanted to study.
Exactly.
You chose music. You chose piano.
Right.
Why Paris?
Well, there was no other place with greater regard for music than Paris. That it just made sense. There was no comparable place. And Paris had also welcomed a lot of Black musicians. There were a lot of famous Black musicians who performed there on a regular basis.
Right, right.
And so it was a well integrated kind of city in the music area.
Got it.
And it was just the natural choice.
It made sense. Right. Right. So you got chosen, you chose Paris. It's 1958 or ish, right? Yeah. And so you're a Black woman from the segregated South, and you take a plane and you go to Paris to study music. How?
No, by ship.
Oh, by ship.
Yeah. It took days to sail from Montreal.
Okay. Did you take a plane there?
No, we went on the train.
Oh, the train. Okay. Got it. Okay. So train to Montreal, ship from Montreal to Paris. You said 7 days.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So that was a trip.
Marvelous days, of course.
I'm sure. Okay. So so you take your trip to Paris. Was this your first time ever being on a ship of this?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I had never conceived of such a thing.
Got it.
But somehow, and I don't know, but it was known that I was studying to be a concert pianist.
Right.
I had a chance to perform for people on the ship.
Oh, and wow.
Well, wrote my mother, and everybody wanted my address so they could report to my parents.
Oh, wow.
Well, I had performed, and what a joy I was. And I was the most popular person on the ship. I was the only Black person on the ship who was not working there.
Yeah.
So it was an extraordinary experience.
So learn a skill and maybe play piano and you'll be popular. Is that the takeaway?
It worked for me.
That's what I mean. But also I think that's beautiful. I think how you can. That's a great way to as a social icebreaker, right? For like for you to have a talent, such an immense talent, and to be able to give that in a way and people be impressed and to automatically break those walls down. I'm sure that allowed for white people to see you more as a human, unfortunately, by you displaying your talent.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So you're in Paris, you're a Black girl in 1958, and you're studying in Paris, and you've left the segregated South, and you can like go in restaurants and do things that you've never done before. Talk to us about that. Like, what are some of the things that you were doing in Paris that you just had no concept of being here in Atlanta in the Jim Crow South?
Well, pretty much anything that I did was different from
right.
in Atlanta. Everywhere I went, and where I ate and where I worked out, or where anything that I did in Paris was different from anything I had done in Atlanta.
Right.
At that time.
Right. Right. So the first time you're invited to a restaurant, is it like, are you sure about this? Like, were you scared at all?
Well,
or you brought that keyboard with you and you started playing and
No, I didn't have the keyboard with me. The piano there.
Yeah.
But to the French people, I was not a big deal.
Right. I had to feel so great.
Yeah, it was such a taste of freedom. And it was so frightening to think about returning to Atlanta and having to lock myself up again.
Right. Wow. So you literally had to escape the country to feel more like a human.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's super important because I don't think that we understand that enough. And also the perspective that you gained by realizing your humanity at such a young age is something that people in your generation may not have ever experienced. The opportunity to just be invited in as a human or treated like a human is just such a novel concept in 1958 in Atlanta. I mean, really anywhere in the United States, it's masked in different ways, but for you to just be able to walk freely had to just, I mean, feel incredible.
And, you know, and to feel welcome and
wanted.
And wanted. So it was an extraordinary experience, which made it very, very difficult for me to return to Spelman for my senior year, which I was, I had to do that.
Yeah. So you
had to graduate.
Right. You had to go back. And so you spent, I heard somewhere that you spent 2 summers and a school year.
Right.
In Paris. So you were there for a while.
I was there for a while.
And you were communicating with your family via letter? Okay. So we need the postal service at this time.
The postal service was very important.
Right.
And I can't believe how it's being tampered with and, changed. I mean, it's one of the perfect institutions.
Right.
That America has.
Right.
Would think that anybody would come to tamper with that so they could get some votes.
Right. Well, look at where we are. I think that so this key experience, and you mentioned before that you came back and you were even a little depressed. I can imagine on that 7-day boat ride to that train ride.
Right.
You were probably dreading the whole time going back.
Absolutely.
Right.
I would have done anything to be able to stay, but I would have had to ruin the Merrill program.
Right.
I had to come back.
But coming back though was a blessing, because if you hadn't have come back with that mindset of freedom, of just basic humanity,
right,
you wouldn't have been able to get to this next step in our journey here. So you go to Paris, you study there, you speak a little French, you eat at a restaurant here and there, you come back to Atlanta on your journey. And I've traveled before, and I've had to take a slow boat that was like days and had to do so. I know.
Yes, you know what that's like. Yeah.
Yes, and I know when I'm ready to get off and get home. But you're thinking about a lot. You have a lot of time to think. You come home, and the civil rights movement in America and Atlanta is in full swing.
It hadn't really begun.
Really?
No, it began after we came back. After I came back.
So I know the student movement did, but was the civil rights movement kind of already going, or no?
Well, I'm sure it was, kind of going.
Yeah. But a big catalyst, I definitely know, was the piece that you kind of contributed to wholly.
Something had to be done. We were just kind of languishing. And Lonnie King had also been abroad. He had spent 3 years in the Navy.
Ah, okay.
Okay. And so this famous day in February, when Julian and Lonnie and I were at Yates and Milton drugstore.
Right.
And found out about the North Carolina students.
Right.
There were 4 of them, but they had gone and sat down at the counter at Woolworths, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
One of those institutions.
Right.
Where we weren't welcome to come in and sit down.
Right.
And I had just come back from a place where I never had to think about where I was going to sit.
Right.
And so had Lonnie and Julian of course, was born into civil rights.
Right.
It was just extraordinary. We were sitting there, and there was the newspaper talking about what the North Carolina students had done.
Mm-hmm.
And even that night, Lonnie gathered some people to meet on campus and start discussing a student movement.
Right, right.
But it didn't take long for that information to get to the college presidents.
Got it. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, they called a meeting of, they wanted 3 people from each of the 6 colleges that made up the Atlanta University Center.
Right.
And so from Spelman, Marion and I were 2 of the 3, and then one other. And of course, Lonnie and Julian, they were the ringleaders, and naturally, they were there. But for the one and only time I saw all 6 of the college presidents in the same place, at least for the first time.
Right.
Very distressed that word had gotten out to them that we were planning to demonstrate against segregation.
Right, right. And so so for everyone watching, these are the college presidents of Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown, Atlanta Theological Seminary, I think, Clark, Atlanta University. Oh, yeah. And I think that was it, correct?
Right.
So, okay. So then they all get together, they bring students from each school, and they say, okay, what are you all doing? What's going on, right? And then is this, to be in that room, the energy had to be electric. So were you all like, what was that? Were you all like yelling at them and them yelling at you?
No, there wasn't any yelling. They were very calm, but they were the presidents.
Yeah.
But they were very determined that they would have to put an end to our demonstrations. And we'd only done it one night, and they like in the next day or so.
Right.
To put a stop to it. See, I think they were receiving a lot of benefit from the whites who paid them to keep up, to keep things calm.
Okay.
And so it was a threat, not just to them personally, but to the college.
To the institution, right.
Yeah. And they were determined that it wasn't going to happen, and we were determined that
it was
going to happen.
Right. So then you go from that meeting, and then you all decide that a document needs to be created.
Well, they decided.
Oh, they decided, the presidents.
Yes.
Okay.
Clemens and company said you need to at least forewarn the people of Atlanta that you
want to do
invade places where you're not allowed to go.
Got it.
And so that brought on an appeal for human rights. I was chosen to be there, and Julian Bond.
Yeah.
With me, and we didn't have much time because we were ready to go. We were ready to take.
Right.
Yeah.
So this document was a heads up, essentially. It was a heads up, and it was basically saying, hey, this is what we want. These are basic rights. These are coming from all the, the Black youth, upstanding youth in the city.
Right.
And so you all go back, and this is the part of the story that I love because I'm reading this guy's book. So you told me that you all go to a gentleman named Howard Zinn's house. Howard Zinn is the author of this book called A People's History of the United States.
Exactly.
He is a former Spelman professor, a white guy who was a very well-known professor at Spelman, and an active member of the civil rights community, at least from the academic perspective. And his book is incredible. I'm reading it now. It basically talks about the history of the United States from the perspective of people that have been disenfranchised. So I'm sure his, teaching at Spelman was right aligned with that.
Exactly.
You go to his house.
We go to his house. He has this great big enormous black typewriter, the likes of which I don't think I've ever seen since then. I was writing in a longhand, and he and Julian were typing up, and we were discussing, and we didn't have a lot of time.
Right.
So he was a singular force. Because I don't know that we would have found another professor
right
willing to put himself out on the line,
right
for integration.
Right. So you go there, you go to his house, you start writing this. Julian Bond is typing, you're like writing it. Are you saying this out loud, like an appeal for human rights? And where do you even start with that document? And I love if we could get the document on screen and kind of show them a little bit of this like incredible document, because it is so incredible. We, the students of the 6 affiliated institutions forming the Atlanta University Center, et cetera, the bodies in the cause of gaining those rights which are inherently ours as of the human race. As
on this one it's left out. As members of the human race.
As members of the human race.
Yes.
Got it.
That's why I don't like for anybody to type it. I just like for it to appear this way.
The way it was printed.
Every word is there,
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And this is true. And so you typed it, but what I want to get from this is that you actually wrote out 6 distinct sections or 7 distinct sections of places where you wanted them to know that you all were looking for change: education, jobs, housing, voting, hospitals, movies, concerts, and restaurants, and law enforcement.
Right.
And how did you all come up with those sections? Were they just obvious?
They were obvious. Yeah, they were pretty obvious. We couldn't, we weren't treated as human beings in any of those categories. And those are the categories where you need to have freedom and to be treated as a human being,
right,
and live your life.
Right.
The hospitals were segregated, and of course the movies in those places were segregated. Black people and white people didn't work together, and the schools, they were just going right along, black schools and white schools, as if we were not members of the same race. Right.
And so you write this document, you give it, you all come out of this, days long session, you come out with this incredible document and you take it to, I'm being dramatic because I sense drama in this. It's such an incredible story. You come out with the document, then you take it to the presidents, the Council of Presidents that you've taken this to, and you show it to them and you go, this is what we want, this is what we're planning to do, and this is what we're asking for. What was their response?
They couldn't really complain about the content of it. It was all true, what we were saying, this was our life, separate and unequal.
Right.
And so they made a change or two. I think I might have pointed out to you one of the.
Yes. Yeah. They made a couple tweaks and before it was printed. So then you also explained to me that in order for this document to be received, it actually was published in the Atlanta papers, and it was paid for as an ad, correct?
Yes. Well, first it had to be.
Got it. Okay.
And so it was presented to each of the student bodies of the 6 institutions.
Got it. That's the purpose of the presidents being on the. Got it. Okay. Okay. So it's presented and accepted.
And Dr. Clements of Atlanta University was the person who actually found the money, came up with the $1,000 or whatever it was. And it was published in the Atlanta Constitution in the morning paper and the Journal.
Right.
2 papers a day. Now it's
right. Right.
But it was published in each of the papers, and then it went all over the country.
Yeah. And I was reading that it was picked up in the New York Times and like a ton of different papers. And this document that you created on Howard Zinn's typewriter at his home, I'm still back over that because I'm still reading his book. So like I can't believe you did that there. But your work is in all of these publications. I mean, your parents had to be incredibly proud. Your friends, I mean, you were already popular. So like, what did it do? Were you like, did it make you like a celebrity?
It probably did. I don't think of it in those terms.
Right.
But a lot of letters came into Spelman from all over the world.
Yeah.
In the document.
Wow.
And it was quite an extraordinary event.
Right. Right. Yeah. And then that kicked off. I mean, and just so we know where we're actually coming down time, but this document, An Appeal for Human Rights, once it was printed in the Atlanta papers and then got, national and even global recognition, was a catalyst for the Atlanta student movement, because then people, including everyone else that we've heard about that participated in the sit-ins, actually had a very tangible list of things that you wanted. Because before, it was just, we want equality or we want whatever, but now
very general,
very specific demands, right? Yeah. Do you have a favorite part of that document or a notable part of the document?
Oh, I wish I had thought about that. Well, I like the third paragraph about "we do not intend."
Ah, okay. Would you mind?
It says, "We do not intend to wait placidly for those rights which are already legally and morally ours to be meted out to us one at a time. This youth will not sit by submissively while being denied all of the rights, privileges, and joys of life. We want to state clearly and unequivocally that we cannot tolerate in a nation professing democracy and among people professing Christianity, the discriminatory conditions under which the Negro is living today in Atlanta, Georgia, supposedly one of the most progressive cities in the South." It's very small.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. It was basically saying we won't sit and be silent. Yeah, that's incredible. And I have one more question on that. You added something in there about, you mentioned this practice isn't keeping with the ideas of democracy and Christianity. And so I thought that was interesting. Was there a particular reason that you added Christianity there? Was it like to mirror any other of our documents that our founding fathers have written, or was it just because of, why was that mentioned in this legal document, or in this demands document rather?
Well, Christianity is the dominant religion.
Yeah.
It was the Christians mainly who were saying we can't eat with them.
Right. So you
can't eat with them, and so because it was the dominant philosophy, it had to be mentioned.
That's incredible. I think that everyone who's watching, if you have an opportunity to read this document, it is not incredibly long, but it is very powerful and really will give you a sense of Dr. Pope's eloquence and also really what they are, the state of our world in 1960, in which this document was published. So we're at time. My final question to you is, do you have anything if there's something that, you would charge my generation with, and those, generations to come, what would that be?
Well, I would want people to have a sense of history. I think people, being born in this generation and the previous several generations, sense of history and of how things were before this,
Right.
or any change was made at all, and that it had to be demanded, it had to be paid for. This led to a lot of other activities by students. They
Yeah.
to Mississippi, went all across the South, and it led to a tremendous movement.
Yeah.
Now it seems that things are taken for granted, and there's no recognition that a lot of lives were lost and
Right.
work was done to
Yeah.
the rights we do have.
Right. Right. On that note, that's been incredible. Thank you so much.